G'day everyone, welcome to another episode of the Copilot Studio podcast. And with me today, I have got Rob Goldsand. Welcome, Rob. Nice to have you, mate.
Hey everyone. Hey Daniel.
Now, mate, tell me a little bit about, for those watching and listening, let's dive in and tell me a little bit about Rob. I mean, we've been conversing a little bit over online. And for everybody watching and listening, let's just... who is Rob? What do you do? And what's keeping you busy right now?
All right. Well, thank you, Daniel, and hello everyone. My name is Rob Goldsand. I live right here outside of Sacramento, California, in the United States. I work for Microsoft. I'm a customer success account manager, and what we do is we help ensure clients fully leverage their Microsoft products and investments to achieve their business goals. Just simply. Inside and outside of work, I've been a technologically curious person since I can remember. I'm the kind of guy that when there's a cool app or product, I consider myself a first adopter and can't wait to tell you about it at the next party or hangout. Um, and when ChatGPT specifically was released, I became really obsessed and infatuated with the possibilities. And I quickly looked for ways to use it in my day-to-day life and my work life. So I started a channel called The Gold Standard. So coincidentally at the time,
I see what you did there. The gold standard.
Yeah.
Very good. So that's a YouTube channel, right?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Tell
So
me about the channel. Yeah, what's all that about?
Every co-pilot needs a captain. So the channel is all about how to leverage the power of generative AI in your everyday work and in your personal life. I do some hands-on demos and examples and how you can use Copilot, whether that's in our favorite Office apps like Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook. I also have a lot of videos that explain all the different Copilots that have come out over the last several months and information about price, use cases, and availability. And currently we have about 500 subscribers and 65,000 views on the channel. And my most popular video is how to use Copilot in Excel.
Excellent. So we'll jump into to Copilot in Excel in a minute, but obviously we've got lots of different Copilots. So you mentioned there we've got Copilot in Teams and Word and PowerPoint, and then we've got Microsoft 365 Chat and that type of thing too. You're big on now. I came across your content with some, that Excel or the content you're doing around Copilot in Excel. A lot of the other Copilots are getting a lot of, a lot of airtime at the moment, especially around Teams and that type of thing. But Excel kind of is a nuanced type of Copilot, I guess, and it needs to be for certain people that are obviously using Excel day in and day out. Now, I'm really big on, the adoption side of things, how to get value out of Copilot, and I think one of the key things is understanding how Copilot can help in your everyday role. Now, can you explain a little bit about how Microsoft Copilot integrates in with Excel and what the benefits are and what people are, or what you're seeing in Excel specifically, and what people can expect, or the benefits and the value in Excel?
Great question. So Copilot in Excel helps you do more with your data. So starting with an Excel table, Copilot can do some interesting things, like it can highlight interesting data points that you might have not highlighted before. It could suggest new columns and formulas based on the questions that you're asking or based on the data that it's looking at. And my favorite part to use it for is to generate insights to kind of help you explore the data. And it really enables you to not only just chat about your data, but to transform it too. So you could do things like highlight and filter things like you would normally expect. But for me personally, I spend a lot of time, or before Copilot in Excel, I spent a lot of time looking up formulas of how to use a certain formula in Excel to get to an answer I was looking for. And I've spent a lot of time like on search engines, some trial and error here and there to get things to work. And then in an ideal world, it worked, but a lot of times I had to go back to the drawing table, figure out how to work it again. Copilot in Excel, you could use your words to explain the kind of formulas and things that you want to do, which is a game changer. And when we talk about large language models and that Microsoft and OpenAI and respective companies that come out with, they're really good at understanding the human syntax behind the meanings of our words. So, for example, when I say I need help calculating this and type that into a search engine, I'm going to get a lot of different results. But when I go to Copilot in Excel, it understands the meanings behind what I'm asking for. I could call out a specific header, for example, inside the data, and it'll find out an intuitive way to get to the outcome that I'm looking for.
So yeah, so I was about to ask that. So when you've got I'm not a native or day-to-day Excel user, but if I've got a sheet of data with headings in it, I can use Copilot in Excel and actually call out and talk to my, I like to call it my intern, talk to my intern and say, can you calculate, this, that, and the other thing based on the column headings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So to take it even a step further, I'll give you an example. Say you had some columns that said maybe you're a marketing manager, and you have a campaign column that has the name of specific campaigns, and there's a month column for when those campaigns are being run. You could say, Copilot, can you combine the campaign and the month column into one column and just add it to my spreadsheet? And it can do that for you. So it's really neat from not only understanding like what it intends, but it can also read the data in the table and makes everything so much more real.
Yeah, look, you mentioned something before. I mean, I find when I'm using Excel, I find myself, trying to work out how to do stuff in Excel, whether it is formulas or things like that. And I do spend quite a lot of time, whether it is in Google or trying to find the right formula to do what I'm trying to do. But I think from what you're explaining there, Copilot in Excel is going to save people a hell of a lot of time in actually just getting to what they need very, very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot to mention too, when it gives you a suggestion for a formula, like say, here's the formula to combine those two columns, it'll provide like a proof or explanation of why it says that's the right column. And we'll use those headers too that you asked in your example to make the example more real.
Okay, so sort of teaches you as well. So you're learning while it won't just do it. You'll actually get an explanation as to how it works and why it's suggesting that formula too, which I think is quite good for that learning and development side of things as well, by the sounds of it. What about graphs and charts and things like that? Is it smart enough to be able to put all those together?
Yeah. So a lot of the times you could describe the kind of data visualization that you want to see. But a helpful tip that I give people that are using Excel right now to simply get to some data visualizations is by asking Copilot to show data insights. And it'll give you an example of what it comes up with. But it will then ask you if you want to add all the insights to your Excel booklet. And it will do that. And it will create data visualizations and pivot tables just off of that one prompt. And people been telling me that when they need to understand an Excel sheet in a pinch, they run those commands every time because they can see some conclusions that are being reached about the data, and they can understand it really, really fast. Whereas we might have made a pivot table or a chart or sliced it and diced it another way before, just saves so much time.
Yeah, amazing. Sounds good. Now, I'm not, as I said, I'm not an Excel day in and day out user, but what are your tips for somebody that, somebody like me that's just starting out with Copilot in Excel? Where do we start? What should we do? And how do we get started with it?
Great question. And for anyone that's just getting started, I would recommend find an Excel booklet that you know pretty well. Maybe you created it very well over the last few years. Maybe it's something you look at all the time. But take that workbook and simply clone the tab that you want to work on and rename it Sandbox. And that way you could live inside the same workbook. You have a tab and you don't have to worry about messing up your data or any kind of dependencies on that. And that way you could kind of play with the data. And then the second thing there is once you have, you've selected your data set, it's familiar, it's something that you know of, make sure that it's saved to the cloud. A lot of people say that they think that Copilot doesn't work because they're working off a local file. Copilot needs the internet to work, so just don't forget about that. And then my third piece of advice there is that Copilot, no matter if it's in Excel or PowerPoint or Word, there is a button called View Prompts. And I like to call that the experience on Rails because it has templates on how you can use Copilot to best use Copilot simply. So when you open up Copilot in Excel and you see the View Prompts, there'll be categories like create, understand, analyze, and edit. And then under those categories, it'll list out the examples of prompts that you can use, and then where you would add in your special sauce, like after the prompt, like add a column that calculates Daniel's campaigns, for example. That would be my third piece of advice is just make sure you do the experience on Rails, because then you'll understand how the product was intended to be used.
Yeah, I think those playbooks are going to become really important and really beneficial for people for, starting out. I mean, if you're just launching Copilot for the first time, I mean, where do you start? So having those sort of playbooks or examples of prompts that you can use, and we're seeing it already in M365 chat and things like that, where we've got, we do have those examples to get us started, and then we can really sort of understand the nuances and how to craft our prompts a hell of a lot better. Now, beyond, I guess, I'll call those basic type of things in Excel. So doing, some formulas and a little bit of data visualization. Can we start thinking of some more advanced type of use cases in Excel as well? And are there any examples that you've seen so far that are sort of going beyond those sort of, columns and things like that?
Mm-hmm. I would think the show data insights example is, I wouldn't say that that's beginner, but I would say it's pretty advanced. I would say that's a really awesome and easy way to kind of use some of the advanced features in Excel. And that way you could see data visualizations and how these pivot tables are comprised too. I would say for large data sets right now, there are some limitations with Excel. And those are going to get better with the next versions of Excel. This is very much a version 1, if you will. Advanced wise, I would say use data insights, and that could really open up a lot of doors into using different parts in Excel after that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of Excel, what else? What other Copilots are you using at the moment, and how are they? How are they best? How are they saving your time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I use a lot of them, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
I use Copilot for Microsoft 365 a lot. And really what I use it for, you touched on it earlier, the enthusiastic intern. I like using Copilot Microsoft 365 because it makes me first drafts really, really quickly. And it does it. And we say enthusiastic because it rarely says no, right? It always just like, yeah, I'll do that right away. And it's so confident. But yeah, I use it a lot for Copilot and M365. Simply just trying to find a file or a use case from somebody that from a meeting from several weeks ago. I'll use Copilot M365 chat to kind of find that person, even if I have a rough thought of who that was or what the topic was. Whereas I might have been digging through my SharePoint lists and email and Teams chats before. I use Copilot to search for just about everything. And then it gets really powerful. I don't think people realize this, but Copilot for Microsoft 365, it's grounded in our tenant, right? It uses our meetings, our messages, our emails and calendars, stuff like that. But you can also extend it out to the web, which I think it gets really interesting after that. For example, like I prepare for customer meetings and I ask Copilot like questions I can ask prior to prepare for that meeting. And I'll get some good results if I just look at my internal, database and large language model. But once I open up to the internet and I see what other people in my position are doing, preparing for similar meetings, I think that's when the results get really rich. They get really creative and new ideas come about. So Copilot for Microsoft 365. And then of course I love Copilot for Word. You could really just put almost about any prompt in there and it's going to give you a really rich response. And I just love using other files and sometimes multiple files to create things. I think that's really cool.
I think that's really powerful. So being able to, reference or compare two files. I was doing something the other day where I was, putting together a proposal where I had what I thought was a good proposal in a template, and then I had some notes from a call that I was on with a client and things like that. And being able to reference a proposal and then also reference the notes as well, and then sort of combine that. And you touched on something that I think is a pretty important message in that it is a first draft. So it's probably not going to get you to that end result straight away, but it will get you, a good portion of the way there. And that's where the big time saving is as well. The other thing, especially around Copilot in Excel, I think it's obviously specific to certain people in their certain roles. And what we're seeing now, and I'll be interested in your take on this as well, is that people work differently. Obviously, people are in different roles. An executive is going to use Copilot in a different way than a person in the finance team, for example. A CEO might use meeting recaps or Microsoft 365 Copilot inside of Teams to stay up to date on messages or summarize emails or things like that. Whereas what we're talking about here with Copilot in Excel is obviously pretty specific. Well, can be pretty specific to a person in that particular role. So being, understanding how to get value out of the different Copilots for your specific role, I think is where organizations will see the most benefit from. So when you're talking and dealing with your customers and your clients, is that sort of the messaging that you're giving them as well, is identifying those use cases for those roles?
Yeah, absolutely. It's identifying the use case and understanding where the bottlenecks are currently, and kind of just being able to be vulnerable with where the pain is. Like maybe this process is taking really long, or and just being honest too. Like we stare at this vast amount of PDFs all day, every day. We wish there was a better way to do this, but we're not sure. So just being like honest about, the roles or the activities and where you're having shortfalls is usually step one. But I like to really emphasize the productivity part for every single role, and to understand what that means for every role is going to be different. But For example, when I look at ways that I could save time, I'm always looking for ways that I could just eliminate the mundane and focus on the creative. So when we are talking about copilots for different roles, we like to think about putting it in that kind of frame of mind. Is what should you really be doing, or what do your staff think they should be really spending their time doing, or what are they begging you to spend more time doing? And then we could kind of drill in and find out where Copilot can possibly help there, and make it more real for them. But to give you an example, though, with Excel, I had somebody recently. They're not an Excel power user by any means, by any stretch of the power imagination, and they'll tell you that. And they've been looking at the same spreadsheet for 6 months, and on a Monday, and they know what to do. And I showed her Copilot in Excel and the different features that I use, and she doesn't know how to use pivot tables. Never wanted to learn. I mean, not a lot of us want to learn how to use pivot tables.
It's like me.
Yeah. But I showed her the data insights trick where it makes visualizations in pivot tables. And a month later, she came back and said, Rob, I started playing with pivot tables and Copilot taught me how to use pivot tables. And she added 4 different sheets to that workbook that she stared at every day for the last 6 months. That was normally really, really stale. I don't want to say we created a power user, but we just took someone that normally would not touch Excel and made them love it. So I think there's something to be said, and there's some kind of magic there that we're only scraping the surface right now.
Yeah, and I mean that goes to one of the other topics or points that I tend to talk to people about as well. And there is this idea of generative AI taking people's jobs and things like that. But what you touched on there is somebody that's learning how to use the actual generative AI and learning how to use Copilot specifically. And I think that's where the benefits are going to be. It's not going to be that generative AI in itself is going to take people's roles. It's the people that know how to use it the best and to get the most out of it that are going to take your role. I guess is what we're seeing. That's something right there, that being able to educate people on how to get the value out of that technology for what they're actually trying to do, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what about moving forward? I mean, you're obviously love your generative AI and things like that. Where do you see the future? Well, the future going, the integrations of AI like Copilot in Excel. Where do you think that area is going?
Oh, I love this question because it gets me thinking about the future. I see all of the models and all the different copilots working together to make beautiful things that we see right now. Like what I was telling you before with the multiple files, and then create an FAQ based on that. What if you were able to make a Excel file based on your voice, or an Excel file translated into a PowerPoint file that told a story? I think I see that's where it's going, where we're connecting a lot of different copilots, making it multimodal, using your voice, using video to create really cool things. And I think with Excel on its next couple versions or a couple versions ahead, I would say we're probably going to see like better data visualizations. It's kind of doing the line graph right now, but you can expect to kind of open it up like the rest of Excel, like bar graphs and linear regression, all those things meshed into one. But yeah, I think really the future, and like a year from now, would love to have a conversation with you on what it's looking like then. But I think a lot of these things are going to be connected together, and we're going to be able to create really, really cool things just on a few words.
Yeah, well obviously only in Copilot's infancy right now. So, in an ideal world, I mean, what features and improvements and things like you touched on a little bit there about the integrations between different co-pilots. I mean, that would be a real game changer. I think if co-pilots would start talking to each other and it'd be almost an end-to-end type of with Excel. What features do you think that would you like to see sort of coming to Excel? Are there anything in particular?
Yeah, I would like to see kind of more of like adding an entire sheet like based off of like a table of data and just kind of taking it to a different kind of analysis, not necessarily one that you're predicting, or it might have a suggestion for a column to add to your table, but saying, okay, now that you understand this data, maybe let's suggest looking at another way to look at it, and maybe it's going to ask me to go find some data to insert into the Excel sheet, because maybe it's thinking about things broader than I am than that one on a specific sheet. So you could be taking in different data sources, maybe from the CRM, maybe from Outlook, and you could put that all together. It's kind of like the features I see on the horizon. Of course, I'm not a product group guy myself, but the more interoperability that we provide and get users just into one screen is kind of the way I see things going. Mm-hmm.
Now, I see a ChatGPT book over your left shoulder there. So, are you? You're obviously using. I mean, you touched on that you're a big Gen AI person. So, are you finding yourself using Copilot more than ChatGPT now, or how are you using both?
That's a great question. It's a really good question. So, I like everyone else, I'm using a little bit of everything. There's certain reasons why I use Copilot versus ChatGPT. But I mean, the simple way I think about it is if it's anything Microsoft, like it's PowerPoint, Excel, Word, my email, I need to scrape and summarize and create, I'm going to use Copilot every single time. And I love ChatGPT, and I still am a paying subscriber. I love to see the stuff that's coming out new and next. And I like to use some of the plugins they have available, and sometimes do side by side comparisons as well. But I find myself using Copilot a lot more, and I not a lot of people understand this about Copilot versus ChatGPT. But Copilot, I don't think people realize that it runs off of GPT-4.
Mm.
GPT-4 is something that you have to pay for ChatGPT. By default, for the free version is 3.5. And we're not talking about like an iPhone 13 to an iPhone 14 like step up. The step up is gigantic, like enormous. It's hard to quantify. 3.5 is like having 100 smart librarians. 4 is like having 500 librarians and they all are very smart, and then they debate one another. Like, it's not just like the memory is expanding. And the reason why I mentioned that is that Copilot runs off of GPT-4. And then if you pay for ChatGPT, you'll use 4. So Bing Chat, which is now Copilot as well, operating off of the GPT-4. So it's like you almost have a free GPT-4 available to you. That gives you really rich responses. I use ChatGPT more in my personal life. I've found like sometimes I'll summarize YouTube videos or really long PDFs or stuff like that. But yeah, I still find myself using all of them, and I don't know when I'm not going to for a while.
Are you using it? Are you using it every day? So one of the things also that for businesses and individuals to ensure they get the most out of Copilot is, I think people just need to start to make it a daily habit. Understand, have a look at what they're doing day in and day out, and work out how they could potentially use Copilot to help either speed things up or be more productive or just get more value out of what they're doing. Are you finding that you're using Copilot, a Copilot, every single day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do use I use Copilot for Microsoft 365 every day, and
Yeah.
I say that I've had to force myself to use it. It's not we all have to kind of reprogram ourselves from the way that we were working before until what we have right now. And a good example of that is like I always thought I wrote really good emails, and I thought I never needed help with it. Then I started asking Copilot what it thought of some of my emails and the suggestions that it came out with, and they were really interesting. Like work on your tone, be more descriptive, add some clarity. So what am I doing? I am working on that, but I'm just putting my thoughts into Copilot first and giving me a really good first draft of that business email. And that's just a way I'm kind of forcing myself to start realizing kind of the gains that I can get. And I don't know how long it might take you to write like an email, but like sometimes I'm like on both sides of the spectrum. It could take me 5 minutes. It could take me 45 minutes. If I could standardize on it takes me like 5 minutes or less, that is tremendous productivity gains in my day. So you just kind of have, I don't want to say force, but like you got to be open to doing things that you thought you were doing well a little bit differently, and being honest at the stuff that you could do better, and then figuring out a way with Copilot to possibly help with that.
Yeah.
And I'll say lastly too, we kind of have a joke here inside of Microsoft. There's always a wealth of information. It's kind of like drinking from a fire hose. In Copilot, like I could have multiple PowerPoints summarized in one prompt in a nice like message in Copilot for Microsoft 365 that I would have spent like an hour or half hour on before. So yeah, you just have to kind of train yourself to start thinking where you can use these tools to benefit you.
I think, there's a lot of conversations with organisations now about just making sure that the return on investment. Obviously, we're paying for licensing and making sure that the business is realising the return on investment. And a couple of the scenarios and examples that you shared throughout this conversation, just reiterates the fact that it is very, very easy and to realize and see that return on investment. I mean, the amount of time that I mess around with trying to find formulas in Excel and trying to work out how to, whether it's simply splitting data or, concatenating stuff or formulas or things like that. Now with Copilot, I can probably just chat to it and get that, done in a tenth of the time probably. So there's some really big time saving, especially in Excel. Now, mate, as we wrap things up, you've obviously got your YouTube channel. You're starting to create a ton of valuable content through there. Where can people find that channel? What do we search for, and where's the best place to stay up to date with what you're doing?
Great question. Yeah, you can find me on Gold Standard on YouTube. It's at Gold Standard hyphen guy is how you can find the username. But Gold Standard, you'll find me on YouTube there, Rob Goldsand. The latest I usually post to my LinkedIn, so feel free to follow me on there. I like to keep a dialogue going and post a lot on there, so we can always be engaged. And if you're a subscriber and you have a really good idea for a video, or if you want to let me know like of a really good way that you're using Copilot to save yourself time, I would love to hear from you, and love to talk with you and get your story out there. So yeah.
Excellent. I'll put all the links and everything like that. So for all of you watching and listening, the links will be in the show notes. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that is generative AI, Copilot in Excel or other Copilots, ChatGPT and the whole Gen AI space, make sure you give Rob a follow and connect with him on LinkedIn, have a conversation. Mate, good to chat. Thanks for joining. And we'll have to do this again at a later stage.
Absolutely, Daniel. It's been a pleasure, and I would love to have you on Gold Standard sometime.
We'll
talk soon.
All right, thank you.